Hey there, you're listening to BD4, where there's no better way to get your Yankees and Knicks analysis. Yanks every series, Knicks every game, and MMA on occasion. Here's your host, RJ Carbone.
And a high drive into left center field. Stanley's going to watch another one fly. Are you kidding me? DiVincenzo a three. Bang! Bang! Knicks take a
Take this time to apologize to absolutely nobody.
At the wall. See ya! See ya! See ya! Mr. Nova.
Anthony for three. Bang! That one goes down and the game is tied.
Rose, you shook up the world again.
I did it again. But God did it, man. I really just have
Gonna have to. Brunson running away. Oh my! He has been the best player to put on that uniform.
Ball game over. Yankees win. The Yankees win.
Never easy. Never, ever, ever easy. Wow. You know, if the Knicks had lost that game, I had in my notes, I had it written down that I was going to talk about how this is the most, should I say it now or should I wait for a loss to rant? I think I'll wait for a loss. But I was not going to say some nice things. You know, the Knicks were up by as many as 16 points, I think, in the second half of the early third quarter. But they end up having this terrible third quarter. And, you know, the Sixers banged up and everything. You know, no Embiid. Man, they are resilient in the fourth quarter to tie the game with Tyrese Maxey at the end there, who finishes with 33 points. Man, I thought this game was ending with a Maxey 3. But the Knicks dominate overtime behind Jalen Brunson ball with Towns out. They had to go back to Brunson ISO down the stretch, and they're always going to go to that. That's their captain. That's their bucket getter. It's the king of New York City. So they go to him down the stretch, and he gets buckets for them. OG, you know, a nice, I guess, dunk to make up for that air ball at the last second in the fourth. But the Knicks ride their captain and win 125-119 over a banged-up Philly Sixers team, a terrible Sixers team, in overtime. This was in Philadelphia. So thank God. We're going to talk mostly defense in this episode. But I did like, you know, it didn't feel like the offense was good, but you look up, the numbers were fine. They scored 125 points. Their offensive rating was 122, I believe. You know, there was a lot of ball moving, especially in the first half. But in the end, they finish, you know, just assist-wise, they had 28 of them and 61% rate. 6 of the 8 Knicks in this game reached double-figure scoring. OG Anunoby with 17 points. You know, they got him going right away. The Knicks run a blind pig action for an OG corner. Mikal, kind of getting hot again. It's never... This guy's so hard to predict. He's had the most inconsistent season. You know, 23 more points last night. He shot the ball well. You know, it was nice to see the Knicks isolate Mikal on the left wing there. Yeah, there was a possession middle of the third quarter. They put him on the left wing in isolation. They don't do that often with him. And he ends up driving the closeout to get a basket. Precious Achiuwa had 10 points. You know, for as much as he struggled this year, I like the defense from him down the stretch, and he was making some plays offensively down the stretch, right? He has the great up and under basket in overtime. And then later in overtime, there's a possession where Philly sends help off of OG, and they put 2 up top on Brunson. Brunson hits Precious as an outlet, kind of like it wasn't a short roll, but it was in that short roll area. And Precious puts the ball on the floor, kicks it to the corner. Or no, he kicks it to OG, who's cutting from the baseline for a dunk. So that was the offensive things. Those were the offensive things that I liked. But yeah, it was mainly Jalen Brunson saving the Knicks from what would have been an awful podcast episode of me just ranting and saying bad things. 38 points for the captain last night. Sorry, let me see if I can find the graphic here. There it is. 38 points for Jalen. 5 rebounds, 4 assists, shot 14 for 22, 3 for 6 from 3, 7 for 9 from the foul line. He was a +7 across 45 minutes. 14 game balls from the Knick captain this year. And he continues to, despite, a little more clunkers than usual, continues to have a really good season, man. His season statistics here, 26 points per game, 8 assists, 49% shooting, 39% from 3. I mean, he's having a great year. I liked that the Knicks, especially, like this is not just last night, but lately, they've been getting him off-ball looks. Like, they've been running him in some floppy actions where they put him in off-ball movement to come off staggers, and they get him a bucket out of matchup creation. You saw some of that, I think, in the third quarter last night, where he came off a stagger to get a basket. So Jalen Brunson gets the game ball from the starters. You could argue that maybe it should go to Josh Hart. He had a phenomenal game, and we'll touch on him. But I think Jalen Brunson just carrying the Knicks home gets the edge there for me. Going to the bench, the second unit, Deuce McBride, man. This was like the first game since Deuce has been back where I felt his presence. 13 points, 4 for 5 shooting, 3 for 4 from 3, knocked down both of his free throws. He was a +5 across 22 minutes. He's got 19 game balls on the year. Despite it feeling like a down year from Deuce, it doesn't feel like he's taken a step forward yet. But he had a good night last night. Finally felt his presence. Like I said, he made some big-time plays in the fourth quarter. He knocks down a three-pointer off of relocation to put the Knicks up 7 about midway through. And then not long after that, there was that one play where he sprints up the court to get a big steal on Paul George in a 2-point game. Right? He sprints up right from behind him, and his eyes were just locked on the ball. And he gets a big steal for the Knicks. He continues to play well with the first unit. I saw a good point made on Twitter that, Deuce plays very well with Josh Hart because he's obviously their best. Deuce is their best transition 3-point shooter, and Josh Hart's their best transition facilitator. So they've been playing really well together this year. Speaking of Twitter and Josh Hart, if you listen to the show, I think we said this a few weeks back. I've been like big on like people need to stop mistaking Josh Hart's skill set for hustle. Obviously, he hustles. He hustles a lot. A lot of players in this league hustle. Ron Baker hustled. But what makes Josh Hart great is that he's very, very skilled in pretty much every aspect of the game except for 3-point shooting. Right? And there were some tough moments last night where you could see why Josh Hart can be a detriment in the half court offensively sometimes. But he's got an amazing skill set where he's able to do things with his body, right? Like creating angles off the glass when he's finishing at the basket in transition to to make the ball go in the hoop and to do things like rebounding in traffic where he doesn't box out, but he flies from the wings to crash and to go after loose balls and to be able to stay in bounds when you're on 1 foot falling out of bounds and make a pass to somebody without turning it over. Like, that's skill, man. It's athleticism, it's skill. Of course it's hustle, but he has skill on top of it all. And he was making big plays like that all night last night, which is why he picked up another triple-double. 10 points, 17 assists. 10 points, 17 rebounds. And what do you have, 12 assists? Just, the guy is a different animal. You know, which is why with guys like Josh Hart and guys like Mikal Bridges, I don't exactly criticize Tibbs for the big minutes totals, because those two guys I look at as different animals. Tibbs, speaking of him, I want to give him credit last night for adjusting schemes, man. You know, the Knicks last night were much more aggressive in coverage. They were switching, and they were doing some hedging with their bigs. Now, this is probably because Karl Anthony Towns did not play, and Philly was running a small ball lineup as well because Embiid's been out. However, you did see a possession third quarter where Paul George is in isolation, and the Knicks scram switched it to get Brunson off him. And Hart ends up switching onto him, and he gets a big stop on Paul George at the basket. So I thought that was interesting. You know, but for the most part, you know, the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau was doing a very nice job for once actually utilizing this skill set of his two bigs. Right? He was utilizing Precious Achiuwa's skill set by playing him a lot less in drop and more at the level. And I don't think it's a coincidence that in the game he does this with Precious, he has arguably his best game of the season. At least his best half, right, in that second half. But like all game, he was switching on to smalls, and he was holding his own. He was switching on to wings, and he was holding his own. Right, and at the end of the first quarter, he picked up Paul George in transition, and he does a very nice job contesting a three-point miss from the right wing. Give me 1 second here. I just got to take care of something. But for the most part in this game, it was a lot of switching on to Tyrese Maxey. Right? Late in the second quarter, I don't know, a few minutes left in the period, Precious switches DHO with OG Anunoby, ends up contesting a three-point miss on Tyrese. At the very end of the second quarter, Mikal gets caught on a rescreen in DHO. Precious switches to Maxey, contests multiple misses at the basket. Late in the third quarter, Philly runs a double drag, and they were spamming those in the second half. The Knicks switched the first screen with OG out of the action. Now Hart's in the action on PG. And for the second screen off the double drag there, Hart fights over the top with Precious and drop. And Precious does a nice job contesting at the basket. It was just a really, really tough make from Paul George. But down the stretch in the game, you know, I thought he did a nice job on Tyrese. There was a possession late fourth quarter. Josh Hart gets caught on a rescreen in DHO. Precious switches to Maxey, and he contests a three-point miss as Hart recovers. The next time down, I think it was Precious switches DHO with Mikal, ends up blocking Tyrese Maxey at the basket. Early in overtime, he switches pick and roll onto Maxey, and he's on an island, but he does a nice job staying with him for the most part. Kind of gets beat at the end, but Maxey misses at the basket. The very next time down for Philly, Mikal gets beat as Maxey stampedes the catch, drives, Mikal's behind, so Precious stunts over and help, blocks Tyrese Maxey at the basket off a drive. The only time in this game where Precious got beat on a switch was that, you know, those last couple seconds there in the fourth quarter. off of the switch up top, where Precious was in the game, and Tyrese, beats him with the finger roll going left. That's going to happen. That wasn't a coverage issue. I had no problem with the Knicks switching that. I think just in that moment, Precious needed to be ready. Like, you're in the game, you're on the floor in that moment to switch that action. You must know that. But overall, I thought he did a really solid job defensively in that second half. And Tibbs actually utilized Jericho a little bit in aggressive coverage as well. And Jericho's got that similar skill set to where he has side-to-side agility, right? Early third quarter, you had Jericho switch onto Maxey off a double drag. He contests a three-point miss. Late in the third quarter, Philly runs another double drag with the Knicks. Sims is in the action. The Knicks double switch it, and it results in a Paul George basket, but it was a good idea and pretty good coverage with Sims. Just a tough basket by PG, who had 26 points in this game, of course, right? And there were a couple of rough moments with Jericho, right, where he was late on a switch or where he was beat on a drive and gave too much space. But, overall, this is still something the Knicks are going to have to work on. They still need, there's a ton of room for improvement in their half-court defense, navigating pick and rolls. There's still, a ton of miscommunication. So they need to continue to refine this. There's a lot of miscommunication on switches right now. Auto switches, wing switches, wing and Precious or Jericho switches, right? It needs to be more quicker. It needs to be seamless. And right now it's not. So with more reps in switching, that can help you be more quicker and become seamless on those actions. But it's hard when Tibbs is not going to switching defenses as much as some of us would like. Some miscommunication and help defense, that's been an issue all year. Like where's the help going to come from? Who rotates off the help, knowing where the rotation is. And there's still the issue of when the Knicks want to be aggressive in coverage, you can understand why Tibbs is less hesitant to do so. It's because they're fundamentally inept, especially when Towns is out there, right? In terms of positioning, stance. Sometimes Towns has got to lunge. And what happens when he lunges? Cade Cunningham beats him to the basket. Whoever. Or hedging too softly, right? If the Knicks are going to hedge some of their bigs or whoever they hedge with, really, they have a tendency to do it soft. And what ends up when you don't hedge hard enough, you get beat on the edge, and that opens up a lane. So they need to figure out when they're going to switch and, when not to switch, right? You don't want to switch when Brunson's in the action, right? And I thought a big reason Philly got back into this game in the third quarter, early parts of the fourth quarter, was because the Knicks went away from a drop with Brunson and they switched him. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Precious comes off a double drag and he scores. Not Precious. Paul George comes off a double drag and he scores at the basket over Brunson very easily, right? And that was an action where the Knicks probably should have dropped everything. They should have dropped on both those ball screens, drop Brunson on the first screen, and have OG fight over. But instead, they switched OG and Brunson. So Brunson's on Paul George, and then on the second screen, because Jericho's not in a drop, he's up, and they're not going to switch it because, again, it's moving quickly. You can't decide to switch that last second. So it ends up being an easy basket, for Paul George as he drives Brunson. Early fourth quarter, because Brunson was at the level and Deuce tried fighting over the top, Philly rescreens to get the Brunson switch. That ends up being an easy floater from Doughton Jr. as he drives Brunson. So there were moments where the Knicks executed Brunson drops effectively and they tagged the roll and they were hedging while other guys were covered. But it's still, a little iffy. They still need to figure this out. It's going to take reps. And I think the question everybody is asking is, are they going to have enough reps in aggressive coverage to figure out this defense? Is the defense they're primarily going with, which is drop coverage, is that going to be good enough with Towns out there? I have been very consistent, and I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think it's going to take a year to figure out this defense, but we'll see. Tom Thibodeau has a lot on his task, and these rotation minutes are becoming a topic every night now. It's kind of getting tired. In this game, I kind of understand some of the Tibbs criticism. Deuce McBride was taken out of the game for a struggling OG Anunoby like 30 seconds after he made two big-time plays, and those are the two plays we mentioned earlier, where he knocked down a big three and then he stole the ball from Paul George. 30 seconds later, he comes out of the game, OG comes in, and OG immediately misses a three, and his defense wasn't great. I think, Tibbs wanted wingspan. He wanted size down the stretch there. But it's a decision that I was questioning. And, the campaign minutes continue to be very curious to some. It seems like, or just a few weeks ago, it seemed like he was out of the rotation for Shamit, right? But now Shamit's out of the rotation for campaign. But then campaign last night goes back to not playing in the second half. Brunson played the entire second half. Deuce McBride played 24 minutes in this game. Campaign finished with 7 minutes all in the first half, I believe. But again, it's tough because he's not going to play a ton because it's hard to play him with Brunson and still get Deuce McBride minutes, right? Because we know, and we've known forever, Tibbs prefers size. He doesn't like to go to these 3-guard lineups. That was the same conundrum we had in the first half of last season, where you rarely saw those lineups where it was Brunson, Grimes, and Dante, because he didn't like the size. Campaign isn't a true wing. Deuce McBride's not a true wing, although he plays like a wing. So Tibbs ran 7.5 again last night, which seems to be what he's going to do. And that's an incredibly short rotation. So I get the concerns, but at the same time, Landry Shamit's not an NBA player. He's a league minimum player who, the minutes police will make you believe he's something better than that. He's not. Like, teams have consistently passed up on this guy because he's just not very good. He's supposed to be a good shooter. He's not. His best skill set in 3-point shooting is mediocre at best. It kind of reminds me of like last year when Knicks fans were advocating for Shake Milton to get a rotation spot. Like, you guys hype up these random journeymen for what? It's crazy. Like, if Ron Baker was on this team, I feel like because he hustles, you guys would kill Tibbs for not playing Ron Baker. Like, I don't know, man. But I'm with some of you. Like, I'm with some of it. Like, I understand, like, wanting Tibbs to play some of these rookies. I get that to an extent, right? They've all got some decent upside. I actually like some of these kids. Like Huck Porty, he's long, he's big, he can make some plays off a short roll. Tyler Kolek, he's a nice backup point guard, can make some solid pick and roll reads, can shoot a little bit, he's aggressive. What would make the most sense to give him even just a couple of minutes a night, 5 minutes, Pacome Dadier, right? Who is a bigger wing, who can shoot a little bit, and he's got some defensive upside. But, I think why Tibbs is not trusting these kids when he probably should is because he's scared of the floor. They've got upside, but you look at their floor and, they're rookies. So they've made, he's scared of the defensive issues. He's scared of the decision making. How many times have we seen Tyler Kolek get beat on a back cut? How many times have we seen Dadier give away an open lane? Huck Porty make mistakes with the ball in his hand. And it's hard to play Huck Porty when Precious and Josh Hart already can't shoot the ball in space well. But, it's the turnovers, it's the defense that he's scared of, and I can understand that. So I think it's more of a front office thing rather than a head coaching thing, in my opinion. They just need to go out and get some depth at the deadline, even if it's not anything crazy. Use Precious's $6 million, use Mish's $12 million, whatever it is, the descending money on his contract. Like, it's a double-edged sword, in my opinion. You want to win, but you want to spare these guys minutes for postseason because it's not sustainable, right? It might not be sustainable to keep playing these guys 40 minutes a night. But I'm not going to sit here and blame the head coach every time we lose and then ignore that narrative when the Knicks win, because, 1,600 minutes later, Josh Hart is still getting triple doubles, same thing. Mikal Bridges, is he inconsistent because he's tired? How do we know it's just not the ebbs and flows of the NBA season? How do we know it's not fatigue? OG Anunoby, is he having a down season because he's tired? Is that why he's faded off from his hot start? Is it fatigue, or is it just the ebbs and flows? Did Brunson turn the ball over in overtime because he's been tired? Or is it because his decision-making has been a little iffy from the start of the season? So nobody really knows. All I'm saying is, like, it makes sense to have concerns about the minutes, but it doesn't make sense to just go to the extremes and assume. And I'll end this by saying congrats to Tom Thibodeau. I can't speak tonight. Congrats to Tom Thibodeau for becoming the 30th winningest coach of all time. It's a nice little accomplishment there. But that's it. We'll talk a little bit about what's up next when we return from our first break here on the show. BD4 is available on social media for those who want to follow. You can find BD4 on Instagram at BD4Pod. You can find us on X at BD4Pod. And you can find us on Facebook by simply searching BD4. Hey guys, just a quick reminder, this podcast is also available in video format on YouTube. So be sure to go over to the YouTube channel, BD4, subscribe, like the videos, comment and tell me how much I suck or maybe how much you like the video. We'd very much appreciate it. Don't have time to sit down and watch a video? You can listen to BD4 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And you can also watch the video format on Spotify too. If you feel like supporting the podcast, you can Venmo at Robert-Carbone-JR-28. We really appreciate your support. All right. Coming up next for your Knickerbockers is an 8-game homestand beginning tomorrow night. They've got Minnesota tomorrow night for the rematch at 7:30. They've got Atlanta on Monday, which I'm going to talk about right now. Brooklyn at the Barclays Center on Tuesday. It's the second of a back-to-back, but another home game. Sacramento, Memphis, Denver after that to wrap up the month of January, and then the first couple games of February to wrap up the homestand. They've got the Lakers and Rockets. So some tough teams, some tough matchups in these upcoming games here on the homestand, but let's try to win at least 6. That'd be huge. Let's get hot again. But I advise anybody who is a Knicks fan to watch that Hawks game on Monday. Monday is the MLK game, and the Knicks will play Atlanta. It's a 3 p.m. game, but I advise anybody who's a Knicks fan to just at least watch the pregame for Clyde Frazier's monologue, or the beginning of the game when he does a monologue. If you work, if you're not going to be home, record it or find it online somewhere. It's going to be on social media. But I really advise anybody who's a fan of the Knicks to watch the MLK game and listen to what Clyde Frazier has to say. In a time like this, it's needed more than anything. It speaks a lot coming from a guy like him who has experienced all of it. This has been one of my favorite games for a while now. Whenever the Knicks play on MLK Day, it's great. Last year I remember Clyde speaking to Monica on the pregame, and he was talking about how he went to MLK's church in Atlanta, how he grew up during segregation, and like how someone like him had to give beyond 100% just to keep his job because of segregation, and just spoke on like the progress of the NBA, and he gave credit to guys like Jerry West and Bob Cousy in bringing all the races together. And he said a number of things that stuck with me on how Jackie Robinson got us on the field, but Martin Luther King got us on the mic. That was one of the quotes that really stuck with me. How they're not just athletes, but there are other things that African Americans can do in life, and never look down on a man unless you're helping him get up was another quote he said. He said he took that from his father. So really, really good stuff from Clyde Frazier. I advise anybody who watches the Knicks to check that out. It's really important stuff. So that is on Monday, but coming up tomorrow, the Knicks have Minnesota, who... Did they win that last night, or did they lose to Golden State? I was watching some of it. I think they lost. So that's it. Let's wrap this up with our trivia question when we return. Stay with us. Do you enjoy Yankees baseball but are tired of hearing me yap? I have a suggestion for you. Go check out Yankee Crazy Podcast. Greg Gill is a Yankees podcaster on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and he's now selling merch. Go to yankeecrazy.myshopify.com. Stay connected with us. Visit BD4blog.com to explore our blog, tune in to our latest podcasts, and follow us on social media. Thank you for being a part of this community. All right, let's get to our trivia question. Okay, sorry. Checking something out on my phone. I had to do something real quick. Episode 783 of the podcast here. Our trivia question of the day. How many triple doubles Jesus. God, I have like an issue where I just rush through my sentences. It doesn't happen when I talk and conversate with humans. Only on the podcast. Only when I hit record. How many triple doubles does Josh Hart need to tie Clyde Frazier's single-season Knicks record? All right. So that's our trivia question. How many triple doubles does Josh Hart need to tie Clyde Frazier's single-season Knicks record? Let me know the answer. Let me know the answer wherever you can reach me, and give you a shout out if you get the answer correct. Appreciate you all tuning in as always. And I will see you in the next episode of BD4. Later. Well, if you made it this far, that means you listened to or watched the entire episode. Thank you. Just remember to follow, subscribe, download, rate and review, and all that fun stuff to help out the podcast. And I will see you in the next episode of BD4.